Hi, everybody. I'm Cheryl Casoni. Joining me for the entire hour today, I've got Jim Frischling, co-founder and president of Newoak Capital, and Sandra Smith is with me as well. We have been monitoring all of the events for you, of course, happening over in Egypt right now. I'm going to get right to Ash.
But also, Cheryl, on the ground, there's estimates of anywhere between 5,000 to tens of thousands of labor protesters. They want that minimum wage raised. I mean, there's people there from the textile industry, the cement industry. They want that minimum wage raised. They want the ability to create independent private unions. Right now, that's controlled by the state, or that was controlled by the state. So it's a kind of that what happens now moment. We're still in a food crisis. Commodity prices are still through the roof, and their minimum wage is still about $6 a month.
Jim Frischling, you're nodding your head as well here.
Right. I think right now we're talking about the geopolitical risks, and we're talking about the move to democracy and the demand for democracy. But the point is, this started, I think, at the most impoverished and the most hungry, and that was the I guess the match that lit this fire.
As we cover the breaking news out of Egypt, I want to bring in right now David and Jim Frischling. I'll go back to the issue of Israel, and I'll take that to AWOD in a moment as well, because you have, at this point, the Israelis have been very nervous, of course, because Egypt has been their ally. Mm-hmm. We assume, we hope, that this military will still be a friend to Israel and still be a friend to the United States. But again, we don't know. In
Israel and Egypt, you have the two countries that have received the most financial aid from the United States. And they've existed peacefully for a fair amount of time. So now the question is going to be what is next? I think there's a tremendous celebration going on, and it's well deserved. What happens tomorrow? And that, to me, and I think everyone's commenting on it, is the significant unknown, and it will remain unknown.
And Sandra, nat gas that flows from. And Jim, real quick to you, Jim Frischling, because I have to ask the question as I look ahead here: emerging market investing, a very popular strategy for many Americans.
And I think the risk premium is higher as a result of what we just witnessed over the last 2+ weeks. I will say I think people will start to move money more into the U.S. market. We're going to talk about that a little later. But I am actually a little more concerned. What's the next country that we're going to see have some unrest?
Well, again, we do have a lot of guests lined up on the show, folks, that are going to talk to you about emerging markets and, of course, about your investments overseas. Many of you have profited very nicely over the last 2 years during the U.S. recession. But again, this does make you think a little bit differently about investing in emerging markets and what you can see when you see a government change hands in 18 days. I mean, look, this all began in Tunisia. Now you've got Egypt. Changes have happened in Jordan. So all of this is something that we have to look at as investors and, of course, as business experts and correspondents. We're going to take a break. Reuters is reporting that Switzerland has frozen Hosni Mubarak's assets possibly belonging to Hosni Mubarak. This is coming from Reuters. I want to be clear here. But after 30 years in power, he has just stepped down today. What we're hearing right now, and this is from Reuters, is that the country of Switzerland has frozen assets possibly belonging to Hosni Mubarak. And Jim, I want to bring you into this, because what we did see over the last 18 days as all this began to erupt is several wealthy Middle Eastern families, Saudi families, Emirates families, all looking to move their assets that were currently in the Middle East up into Europe. Now we're getting this report that maybe that the Swiss have frozen his assets. And again, this is Reuters. I want to be very clear here.
As we touched on earlier in the show, there's an element of extreme class warfare here. And I guess one of the questions I'm trying to get a handle on is what are the other countries, the other Middle Eastern countries, what are they looking at right now? What are their people thinking right now? And again, is this going to be something that rolls from Egypt to a Jordan or to any number of countries right now in the Middle East? But no, the move of the assets out of the country was obviously protectionism on behalf of the extreme wealthy.
And the Swiss have been trying to kind of improve and change their image when it comes to hiding assets from around the world, and many U.S. investors have been involved in that as well. Courtney Keeley, live for us from Fox News Radio. Courtney, thank you very much for that update. And again, we are looking at these live pictures, and it is fascinating to watch history that is happening in front of all of our eyes here on our television screens at home and abroad, is what we're seeing in Cairo, Egypt. And again, many questions about, will this be a democracy? Will this be, what does military rule mean? Is this going to become Libya? Many questions. We're gonna take a quick break, come back. We're going to be live in Cairo again. You are watching Fox Business. You are watching history. We'll be right back. But at this point, as we watch these pictures again, the question becomes, what does this country become, frankly, Jim and Sandra? What is it? Is it a democracy? Can they get it together? Can they get this together, Jim, and become a democracy?
I mean, I think that is what clearly the protests were about. And I mean, what a monumental effort over the last 2+ weeks to try to accomplish this. And again, I think the goal was bringing down Mubarak. But now, what is next? I mean, was there even an idea of a transition plan? So now we're under military. Now they're under military control.
Yeah, let's answer that question. I want to bring in now Fox Business contributor and former UN ambassador John Bolton.
Tourism is so important to Egypt. It's 8% of their economy.
And I guess that was going to be one of my questions. I think what the Egyptians have accomplished with bringing down Mubarak is they now have hope. But from an economic standpoint, I was going to ask, how damaging is this to the tourism industry? And maybe that's just a really naive question, because I think it's disastrous. Now, are you saying it's a 6-month lag, a year lag? What do you think the effect's going to be? Because tourism, as you just said, is very important to this economy.
Well, you know, the experience in other situations that we've encountered over the last 10, 15 years is that these things subside fairly quickly. Even political change that's as dramatic as this can often result in a burst of enthusiasm, an energy level that wasn't there before. The infrastructure in Egypt hasn't been disturbed, the tourism infrastructure hasn't been disturbed at all by these events.
So it's a good place to be invested. And the uncertainty will clear itself, but we are long-term investors, and we are prepared to invest in this type of markets.
I mean, at the end of the day, in emerging markets, I think what this crisis just highlighted was just how much risk is embedded in the geopolitical side, and how much, I guess, what risk premium do you think this is this is now going to carry across the emerging markets, or do you think it's really isolated to the situation in Egypt?
No, it's not isolated. We have seen risk premium go up across the board in emerging markets. For Egypt in particular, short-term interest rates were up as much as 300 basis points. And also, if you look at the inflation picture going forward, you're going to see inflation become higher in these economies, especially in the Middle East, where the governments are going to increase subsidies to the poor and also increase transfer payments to the poor. So that will create inflation, which really means risk premium is going to go up for these economies.
Larry Saruma, now Capital Management CIO. Larry, thank you for coming in today and helping us kind of deconstruct emerging markets. And again, this is his specialty. A lot of you at home, whether you know it or not, you do have investments, in emerging markets in your portfolio. Most company 401ks now offer good options, decent options for emerging markets, but this kind of has to give all of us a little bit of pause as we see basically an entire government change hands in 18 days. As we look at these live pictures, and again, this is, for these folks right now, this is a celebration. What does it mean, though, for the country? What does it mean for our portfolios? What does it mean for foreign policy? Once again, our president's coming up in about 35 minutes to give his statement, his take on all of this.